Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Bennett Barclay. I write science fiction and fantasy, and on this channel I talk about all things science fiction, fantasy, or writing related. So I know I'm way past the post on this, but I had an absolutely insane week last week. There was no time for me to sit down and make a video, but last week a new episode of The Mandalorian dropped, and I really want to talk about it. Now, I have been deliberately avoiding any online discourse about this season of The Mandalorian so far. I have been doing that so that I can enjoy the episodes for myself, and also so that when I make these videos, I can give you my own unbiased interpretations of these episodes and my own unbiased reactions to these episodes. I will probably look back at the online discourse after the whole season is over, but for the time being, I'm deliberately staying away from it. I say that now because I kind of anticipate that this episode will be somewhat divisive among the Star Wars fan base. Not necessarily for anything Star Wars related, but because the episode does suffer from a plotting and pacing issue that has been a common problem with The Mandalorian, both in this season and seasons prior. But we'll touch on that in a little bit. To start with, I really do want to cover some of the good points. And let me just say right out, I did absolutely love this episode. I think this is one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. Again, this season has just been fun from top to bottom, and this episode is one of the most enjoyable episodes I've seen so far. To me, this episode almost felt like an episode of Star Trek. This was an episode where Star Wars was starting to handle some pretty big ideas and condense a discussion about those ideas into a relatively short segment of time. This episode was addressing questions about loyalty and compassion and crossing. This episode was addressing questions of building a new society, building a quote unquote perfect society. And this episode was addressing questions about building societies, building a new society, and the opportunities and challenges that is presented by that undertaking. It was also examining the question of reliance on a single piece of technology, such as the droids in this particular episode, and what happens to a society when that specific piece of technology starts breaking down. These are fairly large scope questions, larger than I'm used to seeing in a Star Wars episode and especially a Mandalorian episode. And it was really enjoyable to see that. Now, I expect the whole crime procedural segment in the episode to be one of the most controversial parts of this episode. I think a lot of people are going to be pointing out that you could have lifted that segment out of the episode completely and it wouldn't have made any difference to the plot whatsoever. That, I think, is a valid point, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun to see, and it was a lot of fun to see Mando and Bo-Katan working together as a team and being a really good team. I thought the dynamic between those two characters has evolved significantly since the first episode, and it feels really enjoyable to see the two of them working together and butting heads in a good cop, bad cop kind of way. It feels very right for their dynamic, and I'm enjoying that a lot. Visually, this episode is just absolutely spectacular. This city that where the episode takes place, whether it's in the day or in the night, the city is beautifully shot. It's dynamically rendered. It's absolutely stunning. And I thought they did a really good job with the setting in this episode. And of course, I'm going to talk about the guest stars on this episode because, oh my God, this episode, they just knocked it out of the park with these guys. Jack Black and Lizzo, I could honestly watch an entire show just about those two running their city. And I don't know if it would actually be good, but I could just watch them do their thing and be entertained for hours. They were fantastic. I loved them. Christopher Lloyd, I also thought was spectacular. He did not get as much screen time as I would have liked to have seen from him. Honestly, I think there was more room to let Christopher Lloyd be Christopher Lloyd, but I understand that he wasn't really the point of this episode, and so we do have to move on past him. I kind of hope we see this character again. I doubt we will, but I would love to see more Christopher Lloyd things in Star Wars in the future. Now, on to my negative points, and there really aren't that many, but there is one big one, and I've already kind of touched on it, and that's that unfortunately, as much as I love the entire middle section of this episode, it is fundamentally filler. It is a plot used to fill out time between the two significant sections of the episode, between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin setting off to find Mandalorians and Bo reclaiming her place as the chief of the Mandalorian fleet. The entire middle section, unfortunately, really has no relevance to that main plot. And so, again, this falls into the trap that The Mandalorian has fallen into before of giving you a middle section that could be replaced with any other set piece middle section you want to name, and the outcome would still be exactly the same. Now, as I've already said, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved this episode. And so for me, it's not really a major detraction from this episode, but I think a lot of people are going to take an issue with that. And they're not wrong. I don't necessarily disagree with any points that they might bring up unless I see something really egregious. But this episode, that problem, it doesn't bother me, at least this time. I can't say that it's not going to get old, but they did such a good job with the middle segment and with the crime procedural section that I'm happy to be there and I'm happy to watch it. Also, I didn't talk about it before, but I liked the resolution of the conflict between Bo and Mando for the Darksaber. It makes sense to me that Bo-Katan should be the one who ends up with the Darksaber. I don't think Din Djarin ever wanted to rule Mandalore. I don't think that was ever something he aspired to. It was probably, honestly, the worst fate he could have imagined for himself. So Bo ending up with the Darksaber in a logical way, in a character-driven way, a way that feels right for her sensibilities and the Mandalorian's code of honor, I think that was handled very well. Maybe I'll look back on it afterwards and view it as a cop-out, but for right now, my first impressions of this episode, I think it's been handled very well, and I'm really glad that this is the direction they went and that we didn't end up with some big Bo-Katan Mandalorian fight at the end of the season, which is honestly what I was afraid they were going to do, and I was not on board for that. So to sum up, I really enjoyed this episode of The Mandalorian. I can tell they're building towards something, and I'm here for it because it's still a fun ride, and I'm really, really enjoying this season so far. But that's my thoughts for Season 3, Episode 6 of The Mandalorian. What did you think? If you hated this episode, I want to know about it, all right? I know I said I'm avoiding online discourse, but I'm not avoiding it from you guys, so I want to know. Let me know what you thought about this episode down in the comments below. I would really love to hear from you guys. And until next time, I will catch you later. Bye-bye.